Hello and welcome to the Blockade Runner podcast number 263. My name is John, and joining me today is Ryan. What's up, Ryan?
Good afternoon. Hello.
I like, I'm noticing for the first time I don't know if those are like shelves that hold comics back there to your left, I guess your left, and you have like the different comics on the front there, some X-Men comics I see. That's cool.
Yeah, they're these new kind of comics bins that I've purchased that allow you to slide one in front so that you know what it is, and they're a little bit nicer looking than the white cardboard boxes that I've been using for, the past 20 years. So
Yeah, cool. All right, well, Ryan, we are here today to talk about the Acolyte, right? So, the Acolyte, first two episodes of the Acolyte debuted yesterday, June 4th. So we're recording this on Wednesday, the day after it debuted, and we are going to talk about both episodes of the show. Ryan, why don't we just start out by stating our overall opinion? What do you think of the Acolyte, Ryan? Do you like it?
Well, I think before we even get to that, we should clarify, because for you, yesterday was not the debut, because you got to see it one day early in a movie theater.
That's true.
Talk a little bit about that.
Okay, sure. Yes, Kevin and I, so friend of the show, Kevin, we were able to go into downtown Chicago and see a preview screening of the Acolyte, and that's actually all thanks to a friend of the show, Ian Thompson, who saw that notification pop up on Twitter, I think, or wherever he saw it, and like immediately messaged the Discord and was like, go get, if you want to go, like, get the tickets, like, because I think it was probably less than 5 minutes before the Chicago theater was just like there was no availability to get those tickets. So wow. Big shout out and thank you to Ian, because I would not have been there if it were not for him. So, and Ryan, that's just one example of the many wonderful things that happen in the Blockade Runner Discord. For any listeners who are listening right now and have not joined the Discord, you should do that. And so anyway, thanks to Ian, Kevin and I were able to go, and it was awesome. We went to the theater, and we were not VIPs. There were definitely some people who were on like a press list or something, a PR list, who they had like a whole middle section of all the good seats were blocked off with, and they had like assigned seating for, like journalists and I guess like Star Wars podcasters with clout, you know what I mean? So, for me, I was just like looking for a seat wherever I could. And, we got there at about 6:15, I think, for a 7:00 showing, but that was not really enough to get a good seat. So we were actually all the way down in the front row, like almost all the way to the right-hand corner. So it was not the best seats in the house, but it didn't really matter. I was just happy to be in the house. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But I was definitely watching the show like this, the movie, or the show. Yeah, I was watching it like that the whole time. So, but it was still awesome.
Why do they even have those front two rows in a theater?
I think about that myself. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, I've definitely had to like sit in those before. I think for one of the first showing of either Force Awakens or Last Jedi, I had the worst seat imaginable. It was like that front corner. It was like the last seat available, and it was but that was all that was there. So but it was a cool experience. You got a poster.
Got free Diet Coke and popcorn, so that was pretty sweet also. Yeah.
Really?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we also saw our friend other Mike Harris, although that sounds Mike Harris, but not the one that you grew up with, He's not other Mike Harris. He's Mike Harris,
the one with the beard who's into punk rock. Oh,
yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. So, but that was cool because I didn't know he was going to be there, so that was kind of fun. So, yeah, it was it's a Star Wars heavy couple of days, which was really nice because I'll just real quickly mention that my younger son and I and his buddy went to Joliet Star Wars Day on Saturday, and that was cool too. So Joliet Star Wars Day is an annual thing in a Chicago suburb called Joliet, which is put on by their public library. It's totally free, and it's like a very tiny little version of Star Wars Celebration, and it's really fun. Definitely geared towards kids and promoting reading because it's put on by a library, which is awesome. But yeah, great cosplay and just fun stuff. I was able to pick up some vintage Phantom Menace merchandise, and nothing crazy. I got a. Well, here, let me just show it off, Ryan. I mean, I could just wheel over and grab it.
Yeah. For our audio listeners, John is grabbing something.
So
the preview.
I'm grabbing
the preview.
Yeah,
guy.
the preview. Yep, the STAP, the STAP with Battle Droid, which was like the episode 1 sneak preview. That was $10 and in package still. So it's a cool toy, but really I was like, I should get that because that's like among the first pieces of Phantom Menace merchandise, and I love the Phantom Menace, so I grabbed that. I grabbed this. I grabbed this Attack of the Clones trading card game. So claims to be everything you need. 2 all new 30 card decks, light side and dark side, and a play mat and a rule book and stuff like that. So I'm going to try to play that with Elliot this summer.
That's awesome.
And then I got
we talked about that game
yeah,
an episode of the podcast, and people say it's really, really good, and people still play it. So that is a very cool pickup.
Maybe I should have gotten more than one then, because they were $5 a piece and they had a bunch of them. So I should have probably bought 2, I guess. But
maybe next
I just got the one. And then the last thing I got is this. It's a Qui-Gon Jinn mega collectible from Applause. And I don't know if you can see, but it's number 32,258. So, there's like not that many of these guys out there, but
so limited.
Yeah.
In huge demand.
No, but I thought he was awesome. I mean, he was $10, and I was like, dude, $10, and this is like a big Qui-Gon. So I'm having a little bit of an existential crisis here because, like, I need to take him out of the box and put the lightsaber, blade into the hilt and just have like a giant Qui-Gon, Applause statuette or whatever, like on my desk somewhere. But then, like, he's in the package right now, so.
The box is pretty sweet too.
You're telling me. Look at that. I mean, yeah.
Mega
so
collectible. I love it.
I think I'll take him out of the box, but try to keep the box in like good condition too.
So that it's taking up twice as much space.
And that is such an issue. As I mean, you can't really see, but like this room is jam packed, and it's embarrassing and absurd, and I got to figure out a way to manage all this stuff. But then I thought about that too. I was like, oh, this stuff is so cool. Where can I put it? I have too much already. I was already thinking about how I don't have room. I have too much Star Wars stuff, but you know what? I still bought more.
Yep.
All right. Sorry about that brief detour. The Acolyte rules. Going to see it in the theater rules. We had a blast. So I guess I just spoiled it and shared my opinion. I love the show.
Yeah, I have the same opinion. I had really high expectations going into this. I think, I like Ahsoka. I thought that show was great. It was a lot of fun. But I was also kind of like, I'm ready for some, I don't know, like meatier Star Wars, I guess. Like, Ahsoka's cool, and there's like some, like big ideas and good character moments and stuff, but it's kind of in that, like, it's sort of in that, like, people playing with their action figures kind of Star Wars, and I mean, this is, it's Dave Filoni playing with the action figures that he made, But you know, it's fun. And that's not to say the Acolyte isn't fun, but like the Acolyte is like more, I think, challenging, and it expects more of the audience, where there's you know, like, you really have to kind of be paying close attention, because there's a lot of like subtle mannerisms, and there's just like this rapidly unfolding mystery that you're like, oh, I have it figured out, oh wait, no, oh wait, I have it figured out, oh wait, no, like, and there's like these beats to the mystery like every like 5 minutes essentially, and you're like very quickly you know, these relationships and history are unfolding, and yeah, it's a dense but also very approachable show that I think just really really nails it. It nails the Star Wars thing, and it nails this is actually just like a good TV show thing as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's in a really sweet spot in terms of being entertaining, in terms of being, as you said, approachable, but also having some depth and stuff to it. I mean, I know what you mean, but in some ways I think it's less challenging than Ahsoka, because like Ahsoka is like, and I like that show a lot too, and I'm halfway through rewatching it. I started rewatching it like 2 months ago, and then I've stopped for some reason, so I got to go back and watch the second half over again. But I feel like that show is a little bit like, hey, I hope you watched a bunch of cartoons and know about all this background stuff. You know what I mean? Whereas this show is not that at all. Like, I feel like anybody could sit down and watch the show, and you don't really need to know much about Star Wars, even, let alone you know, connections to other things and stuff like that. And I think that was one of the big, not a big question, but something people were wondering about and thinking about is like, well, okay, so this is, you know, connected to the High Republic. So does that mean, because you and I have tried, and we have not been able to keep up with the High Republic.
500 books.
Yeah, but like, right. But the thing is, like, after watching the first 2 episodes, I don't feel like it really matters if you've read a single page of the High Republic, you know? And I can't say that for Ahsoka. I mean, I think Ahsoka did a fine job of being approachable for people who haven't watched other Filoni-verse, you know, projects and stuff, but it sure would help if you have a lot, you know what I mean? And this is way more just like, this is a show. I feel it really does feel like, more than I think most Star Wars shows, at least so far, it really does feel like a TV show that I think anybody could just sit down and watch. You know what I mean? I guess that's true of Andor also.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think that's the closest comparison. And like, and by challenging, I'm talking more about like ideas and, you know, like themes and depth. Because like Ahsoka is like 24/7 fan service like stuff, like, but that's kind of what like Mandalorian was, starting with season 2, was like, hey, remember this guy? And I mean, that's where the whole like glup shito thing came around, because like it was like, so every episode was like, hey, remember this guy from the cartoon? Remember this guy from the cartoon? Like, and I think Ahsoka kind of falls into that, like, with its, like, it's very referential to other things, whereas, I, like, just, like, a spoiler jumping ahead, when a character in the second episode of The Acolyte says, I've got a bad feeling about this, it was, like, jarring to me, because I was like, oh my god, you're doing a Star Wars thing. Like, I am hyper aware of this, that you are Star Wars referencing Star Wars right now by saying that, and it was like jarring, and because like the show is just not that, in the same way like Andor is just not that. And that's, I don't know, like I think there's like something comforting in stuff like Mandalorian and Ahsoka that's like, hey, remember this thing that you liked from 10 or 20 years ago? Like, here it is again. Like, and that's nice. But like I also think it's like I was saying, like I enjoyed Ahsoka a lot, but then I think if this would have been another show exactly like Ahsoka, it would have been like, I would have probably still liked it, but it wouldn't feel as exciting to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think it is less similar in some ways, and then more similar in other ways, and that's a part of my thing where I said like it's in a really good sweet spot, or like strikes a really nice balance, because I'm going to tell you, in 2015 I sat down in the movie theater and started watching The Force Awakens, and in the first 10 minutes or so, probably less than that, I was like, oh damn, like they nailed it. Like this feels so much like Star Wars. Like this is exactly what I want Star Wars to feel like. I think it was when Poe Dameron said, who talks first? You talk first, I talk first. I was like, oh my God, this is Lawrence Kasdan's script. It's like Star Wars. It's, oh my God, I was so excited and so happy, and I still feel that way. And I think that this show, like I was having very similar feelings watching this in the theater Monday night that I had watching The Force Awakens in 2015 for the first time. Not that it's like, oh, it's just like Force Awakens, but I was looking at it and I was like, wow, this looks more like a Star Wars movie, to me, than some of the other recent shows have. The soundtrack, the score, it's not exactly like John Williams style, but it's closer, I think, than most of the other shows. Maybe Obi-Wan would probably be similar too, but this one really, it sounds like the prequels even. Specifically, it sounds like the prequels to me in some ways. And I'm like, oh my God, I love that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I feel too like the way the Jedi are presented is very prequels, and that's intentional, I'm sure. And I know Leslie Headland really likes the prequels, and I know like obviously this is the High Republic, so it's closest in time frame to the prequels and all that. But I feel like it just feels very Star Wars, and it feels like they looked at the style guide of the prequels, or whatever you want to say, and like really knew how to follow that, but put their own spin on it, update it, however you want to say that. But it's a little more, it's not as corny as the prequels are sometimes, and it doesn't have all the Georgisms that are uniquely George, where, you're watching like the Attack of the Clones and you're like, no other human being would have made this quite like this. This is George Lucas all over. It doesn't do that, but it just, I don't know. It really feels like it nails the vibe, the feeling of the prequels in a way that, made me really, really excited.
Yeah, and I think that's like a great starting point for like actually discussing the show is the prequels, because I mean, obviously this is Leslie Headland's vision, but like it takes everyone involved with the production to capture that vibe. And I think the costuming and the sets and everything are just incredible. We know that they used a lot of real locations and a lot of practical effects, and a whole lot of wire work, which we'll get to as well, which is like pretty new to Star Wars at this level. But I think there's, in some ways, like this, there's been this whole thing for, specifically, no, it's been happening since the prequels, like where people are like, man, this is what I wish the prequels were like. And people have said that about everything from, Knights of the Old Republic to the Clone Wars cartoon to Force Awakens to The Mandalorian. Like, they, you know, people have said that about everything. And I think in a lot of cases, that doesn't quite make sense. Outside of like the broad, like, okay, you didn't like the prequels, but you like this other Star Wars thing. But, like, to me, this show feels like, oh, like, this is kind of what I did, like, wish parts of the prequels were like. I think the way the Jedi Order is portrayed here, like, you get lots of Jedi with lightsabers doing, like, Jedi things in this show, but it's in, like, a very restrained and, you know, like you said, just, like, not corny way. And I don't feel that way about, like, all the stuff in the prequels, and obviously I like the prequels a lot, but you know, it's like those movies are just so frantic and just, like, jumping from moment to moment, and this is like, you're really just kind of, like, sitting with these Jedi as they're doing Jedi things, and, like, it does feel like, oh, this is that live action on screen depiction of the Jedi that, you know, kind of, like, lived in my head, you know, prior to 1999. And then I think, you know, there's stuff that you know, there's a few things that I just really, really appreciate. I think, speaking of the cast, even just, like, outside of performances, which are across the board phenomenal, and you know, some characters have way more of a chance to shine, but aside from that, like, this is, like, a very diverse cast, which is great, and it does feel like, oh yeah, this is the Star Wars, you know, vision that George was kind of, like, inching towards, in, you know, having a galaxy represented, but also, like, thank God the Nemoidians. Like, I had texted about this when the Nemoidians were first, like, shown for this show, and I was like, you know, man, I hope that those accents are less problematic in this, you know, in 2024. And sure enough, they're just they are not, like, stereotypical Asian type of accents.
I think I was just looking at the Acolyte databank stuff on StarWars.com, and the main Nemoidian in that scene, I believe his name is Captain Blex, and I felt like they tried maybe a little bit to hang on to just, like, a touch of the Nemoidian accent, but then the other Nemoidians just sound like normal people, right? They don't have any of that at all. And obviously it's maybe like they left maybe 10 or 20% of that accent in that main Nemoidian, which I thought was a pretty, you know, that was a good way to do it. Like, they actually handled that really well. Yeah,
just not going the, like, 120% most stereotypical accent you could have.
Yeah.
And I mean, so that was cool. Like, and I think, you know, I think there had been kind of, like, a reluctance to, like, use those characters, like, that race, in Star Wars things, because I think people are like, how do we do this? Like, everyone kind of knows it doesn't feel great. It's been called out a lot, but then, like, you know, people are always afraid of, like, well, if we change it, you know, people are going to get mad and say, we're ruining George's vision. or whatever. And so I think people just like didn't use those characters for that race for a while, especially, you know, I think they pop up in like Clone Wars and stuff, but in like the big like live action stuff. And I think this was like, it was just cool because like Leslie Headland, you know, is someone who loves the prequels, like warts and all, and was like, well, I want to use them, and I want to, you know, make sure they make sense for 2024, and, you know, and pulled that off, which was great.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. No, definitely, like, the show does a great job of incorporating the prequels, more probably than any of the other shows so far. I know Mandalorian has done a pretty good job of incorporating prequels components, especially lately, more recently. But yeah, I just, you know, back to the concept of the Jedi here, and the way they're presented. I love the way they appear in the show, and you know, it's cool to see like a small group of Jedi out, you know, in the field, kind of doing whatever. I love to. Kevin brought this up to me on our car ride home, and it was something he noticed early on in the first episode, like in the first scene of the first episode, when May is approaching that community, and she says to the person at the gate, like, "Where's your Jedi?" And Kevin pointed out that, you know, she asked, "Where's your Jedi?" as if like that community had a Jedi assigned to it, you know. And so there's like Jedi out all over the galaxy, which is a cool concept. And we know that there are many Jedi in this, you know, version of the galaxy, or at this point in the timeline. But so far anyway, we haven't seen just 25 or 50 Jedi, or, you know, just like Jedi crawling all over the screen. And we might as the show goes on, but I like the more kind of, I don't know, intimate groupings of Jedi here, and just having, you know, a few Jedi together on screen at a time. And it has been, a really, so far anyways, a really cool portrayal of that. And they feel like an organization. It feels like a group that's alive and well, but, you know, not overwhelming. And I think it loses, you know, to me, the more lightsabers I see on screen at one time, you know, there's a threshold where if you go over it, it kind of loses its potency, you know. And I think they're doing a really great job so far of you know, focusing the show on Jedi, but without having it be losing that potency, at least so far. So I love that.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of what the Jedi do or try to do in these two episodes is they try to understand what's happening, and you know, use diplomacy, and you know, using like conversation.
Now, I know Leslie Headland is, because I would say just a little bit in defense of George, you know, he was a couple steps ahead of us with the prequels in terms of, it took audiences a while, and many audience members, I think, still haven't figured out that what he was attempting to do with the prequels is portray the Jedi Order as an institution that had lost its way, you know. And so we still needed to view the Jedi as heroes and root for the Jedi and all that kind of thing. But also he wanted us to end up walking away viewing that as like an institution that really doesn't function anymore the way that it should, you know. So there's a little bit of me, you know, when we talk about like, well, this is maybe I wanted the Jedi to be more like this in the prequels. Of course, that's what we wanted, but, you know, like George didn't necessarily want that, you know. So, but the point still stands that there are ways he could have, you know, I think it could have been.
Yeah, I think like on paper, it, like, you know, the idea was right, like an institution in decline that was, you know, corrupted from the inside out. But I think it's the, you know, and that's not always like clearly communicated in like the on screen, what's happening on screen, because of, it's hard to get past some of like the heightenedness and the corniness and some of the script and everything like that.
Sure. Yeah. But like, well, so anyway, I know Leslie Headland has stated in the past that she is interested in how did the Jedi go from this time of peace and, being a strong institution to what they are in the prequels. And so I'm just curious how much the show may, as it goes on, wrestle with that a little bit. And I think there are hints. There was at least one moment where I was like, okay, I see, like she is maybe going to dig into that a little bit too, so we'll see, like, if throughout the show, it's as much of a crowd pleasing depiction of the Jedi, or if it's going to start to be a little bit more like, oh, I'm seeing the errors and I'm seeing the issues and I'm starting to see why, they're headed in a direction that's not going to be good. So I'm curious to see how that all plays out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the show does a really good job, especially with the character of Soul, that showing, like, how you can be a great Jedi and still have flaws as a person, and personal conflicts that can, keep you from reaching your full potential. And I mean, obviously he's not the only one in here. Like, when we talk about, I guess we should, like, mention what the actual plot is, at least going by the first 2 episodes, is this woman, May, is killing Jedi, and it is a mission of revenge for something that had happened in the past. And she has a twin, and they are both portrayed by the same actress, which I guess I did you know this going into the show?
No, I had an inkling.
Okay.
I had a feeling that there might be something like that going on, that identity might be, like a key element of that character and of the show, but I didn't kind of know for sure. And I'm still, I still feel like I'm not 100% sure that I know everything there is to know about that whole dynamic, but
yep.
But no, I mean, people had kind of theorized that, like, months and months ago, and then when the poster came out and it featured at the top, I looked up because it's up on my wall right now, but at the top of the poster, there's May on one side and who we now know as Osha on the other side, and so I think immediately people are like, whoa, 2 Amanda Stenbergs on the same poster, like, that's reinforcing. And then, like, at the premiere, the 2 actors who play the younger versions of May and Osha were, like, on the red carpet and taking pictures with the cast and stuff, and I was like, well, that's interesting that there's 2 twin girls that look a lot like Amanda Stenberg except for 10 years younger. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, so I kind of knew, but I guess not knew, but I wasn't super surprised. And so then when that was revealed in the first few minutes of the episode, I was like, okay, well, that's not a big mystery or anything, so yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like, thank God that was not, like, the mystery that they were saving for the last episode. Like, it was just like, oh, okay, well, this is just, like, another dynamic. But I think, like, what's important about all that is there was, like, a sin by the Jedi that May is correcting, or a perceived sin, because there's, like, this story of, like, she burnt down their house and killed their parents, but then she's seeking revenge on 4 or 5 particular
4 Jedi.
4 Jedi, and she's doing it in this, like, very mysterious way where she's like, attack me, you have to attack me first. And then, which is interesting, and then it gets to a point where her it seems that she is an apprentice or an acolyte to what seems to be a Sith who is only shown in like silhouette form, and he says an acolyte kills without a weapon, an acolyte kills the dream.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of the first episode. And then in the second episode, she's like, I have to go kill this Jedi, and I have to do it without a weapon.
Yeah.
Which is just, like, really interesting. So there is, I think, like, a lot, and then when we get to, like, Soul was, having these realizations about what's happening, because Osho was his Padawan at one point, and then he, and then the general thought was that May was dead, and then he's like, yeah, maybe not, and then people are like, wait, she had a twin sister? That's not in any of the records? And he's like, yeah, she did. Like, so it's obvious, like, he's been withholding some information, and there's, like, either, it's cover up, it's a sense of shame, it's kind of hard to read what's happening with him, but it's, like, really compelling drama.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I mean, that is sort of an overview of the plot, that May is killing Jedi. She's doing it at the behest of this master who seems to be a Sith or whatever, and the Jedi are trying to uncover what's going on. They, by the end of the second episode, they know that May is behind it, but they're still trying to follow that case, I guess you'd say, or whatever. Try to continue to investigate, and there are plenty of sort of little mysteries or pieces of information, things we don't quite know, that obviously the show is sort of implying that we're going to learn about as it goes on. So I would like to kind of dig into the episodes, each of the episodes a little more in detail at this point, if that's cool with you. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you did notes. I made some notes for each of the episodes, so I'm ready to kind of dig into them a little bit. Okay?
Sounds good.
The first episode here is called Lost/Found, which I didn't, like, it doesn't come up, I don't think, on screen at any point that's the name of the episode. Mm-hmm. But when you pull them up on Disney Plus, they're listed there. So I found that really interesting. We can kind of, like, maybe we'll return to this idea as we are discussing the episodes, but both episodes so far, the second one I believe is called, I have it further down in my notes, but I think it's called Justice/Revenge. Mm-hmm. And so duality is part of both titles, and I don't know if that's a motif they're going to continue with as the show goes on, if every episode will be kind of that way. But I thought, as soon as I saw that this morning on Disney Plus, I was like, oh wow, that's interesting. That
yep.
That concept of duality is right there in the title, and obviously we have that with May and Osha, who are, and I have the exact line of the poem or whatever you want to say, that young May recites in a sort of Force vision later on, but she says we're two halves of the same whole or something like that, so this idea of duality is certainly one of the themes running through the episodes, which is cool, and it's cool to see that reflected in the titles. So
yeah,
but yeah,
not like a super deep theme or anything like shocking in entertainment, but it is like a core tenet of Star Wars, like duality.
Light and dark.
Yeah. And
right.
Star Wars is, just the heightened version of myth, and that's, I think, like, being very direct about it here, and just putting it right in the forefront is like a very like fitting feeling Star Wars thing.
Yeah, I agree. It's certainly very Star Wars. I mean, the pull between light and dark is something that's there all the time, and obviously two characters who develop and are become better versions of themselves or worse versions of themselves, right? Like people fall to the dark side or they're redeemed from the dark side or whatever, right? Like that's something that's been throughout Star Wars forever. But I am curious too, though, like the way it's presented as almost like, well, I don't know. We'll see as the show goes on. I just wonder if it's going to kind of expand on that a little more, because usually it is pretty cut and dry. You're a good guy, you're a bad guy, and sometimes the bad guys become good again, and sometimes the good guys become bad. But you choose a side, and that's what side you're on for the most part. But the way the show has been playing out so far is like there's all this mystery, there's all this suspicion. And then just the duality there in the titles, just, I don't know, has my mind racing in terms of what kind of story the show's going to want to tell and what it's going to want to say about, the light and the dark and people and things like that. I'm not a proponent of the idea of a gray Jedi or, somebody, a character in Star Wars that kind of straddles both worlds or anything like that. So I'm not like asking for that or hoping for that kind of thing. But, I think maybe the show is going to explore in some ways the duality in people in a way that Star Wars has been a little more broad about in the past,
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's I think that inner conflict in Star Wars, like quote unquote villains, is always, some of my favorite stuff. Like, I think of like Anakin in Episode 3. I would say like the first like 3/4 of Episode 3. And Kylo Ren, Ben Solo through the sequel trilogy, and those moments of turmoil are always just really, really compelling to me, just on like an emotional level. And I think we see that same sort of thing with May, where she's doing this thing that she knows is bad because she's doing it in secret, covert ways, but and she knows she's working with a Sith or something like a Sith or whatever, but she's also like, she isn't that like pure like Palpatine or Snoke type villain in Star Wars. Like, she is, we see moments of her, like when she chooses not to kill the bartender, or anyone else, and she's not just like going on, killing sprees here. Like, she has these like very intentional targets. She's not trying to cause harm to anyone else, really. And she pauses at times, and I think that's again just really compelling.
Yeah, it's interesting. I that's like the first thing I wanted to mention as a sort of little detail is in that opening scene when she, which by the way, the choreography and the wire work and all that was really cool in that opening scene. We'd seen that for the most part, at the Phantom Menace
awesome
preview.
To see again.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, when she kills Indara, it cuts like because it's interesting because you said like she doesn't really want to harm anybody else. I guess she knows Indara will stop that knife from hitting the bartender right in the face or whatever, but I don't think she really cared that much, like if she ended up killing that bartender or not. But anyways, it cuts back to Indara's face, and then when it cuts to May looks like the look on her face is like I don't know, she's like surprised, or like she knew she wanted to kill Indara, but like the way she feels after she's done it is like, you know what I mean? It made me think of Kylo killing Han. It wasn't like afterwards he wasn't like, oh sweet, I did that, you know. It was like, oh my god, what have I done, you know? So that's kind of the look she had on her face. But then when she went down and confronted that bartender to get her knives back or whatever, part of me feels like she would have killed him. But then the child, she had some sympathy for the child and knowing what her backstory is and things like that. I think, you know, so yeah, there's definitely a struggle there, right? She's not just pure mustache twirling evil or something like that. But I do think it's a little more than just, you know, well, I have this mission, so I'll do it, but like almost regrettably, like, you know what I mean? I think she wants revenge. I think she wants to kill these Jedi. But to kill someone is also, you know, until you've done it. I've never killed anyone, by the way, but I'm just saying until you've done it, you know what I mean? How do you know what that is? You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
So there is some depth and nuance there, which I think is really cool. So.
Yeah, and I think there's also, you know, when we're talking about Sith and Sith Masters and everything, there is always that, you know, that manipulation that is most likely happening as well. And
so okay, so then, and this is another thing that reminds me of The Force Awakens. We cut from that, you know, of May to Osha, and Osha like wakes up, you know, and it reminds me of characters, like there's similar moments like that in The Force Awakens. But just the way The Force Awakens opened up with like you meet Kylo and then you meet Rey, and then I guess you meet Kylo and then Finn and then Rey, I think is sort of how it worked out. But like there's these sequences that really focus on these major characters and the introduction of them. They a lot of times anyways, maybe not with Kylo, but they start with like the cameras, like it cuts to like a close up or, you know, on that one face, on that one character. And just the way that it did that really brought me back to The Force Awakens in a very good way. But yeah, we start to learn about her. She's a mechanic, which I was like, that's sweet. It almost sounds Gungan. You know what I mean? Like I was like, are we going to get some Nubian stuff going on here? But I don't know if it's specifically meant to be Gungan or not, but it sounds that way.
I think it's just a very Star Wars-y thing. Like, we're not gonna call you a mechanic. We're gonna move some letters around.
Yeah, I guess that's probably true. But I mean, she was on a Trade Federation ship working as a mechanic, and then there were there were Nemoidians running around. I was like, this is Phantom Menace, like in a big way. It's feeling very Phantom Menace in the best way, you know.
And I mean, I guess like the other, there is like another, I guess less explicit referential thing where someone asks her like, oh, I thought only astromech droids did the outer work on ships. Which was like, you know, you think of those droids on the Naboo.
You think of Rick Oley saying that little droid did it. You know, that's what you think of. Yeah. And then you think of Captain Panaka introducing R2-D2 to Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Padme, and
we never the Acolyte does not ever take things that far.
No, but in that sequence too, we learn that Osha is haunted by fire when there's that fire that almost takes place outside the ship there, or does kind of take place outside the ship, and also that the Trade Federation are already breaking the rules, right? Because like you said, only droids are supposed to work on a ship out you know, exterior like that. But obviously the Trade Federation is skirting that rule and pretending, oh no, we do whatever the Republic, you know, like we follow all the rules of the Republic, right? Like, you're lying to a Jedi's face. Very similar to the opening of the Phantom Menace, and Jord really comes across in that scene. And every scene really, but he really comes across as like the Obi-Wan type Jedi from the Phantom Menace, which is like I know the rules. I follow the rules. The Jedi always right, and I think Soul has much more of a Qui-Gon kind of vibe, where he's like more connected to the ideas behind the rules than the rules themselves, So I appreciate that for sure. Yeah. And then even I think like when Vernestra, who of course, listeners will know from some of the High Republic books or comics, if you've read those, Vernestra, when she's talking to Soul about this, like, hey, we think it's your former Padawan who's murdering these Jedi, she seems really concerned, like, if anybody found out that a former Jedi was the one doing this, that'd be really bad for us politically. I mean, she doesn't use the word politically, but it's like, that's one of the moments where I was like, ooh, okay, so these Jedi do have more in common with the Jedi of the prequel than you might have first thought, right? So,
and that's just so interesting, because I haven't read the Phase 2 High Republic books, but I know Vernestra from like the middle grade, the middle grade books from like Phase 1, and she's like, she's the new kid on the block there, and she's just, she's like the kind of like Ahsoka Tano, of that, and she's just like so young and inexperienced, and all that, and then it's so interesting seeing her, as an adult, like a super adult. She's lived more than like a normal human lifespan at this point, but I don't even want to think about timeline stuff and how many years old she is.
She's over 100 years old, I know. Yeah, she has a different lifespan, and I don't think she would be in Phase 2, because Phase 2 goes back like 100 years or something before, but she would be probably in Phase 3, which is going on now. Yep. So I haven't started Phase 2 yet either, so way behind. But
but it's just interesting how kind of like all those years in the Order have made her kind of just like an institutional figure. And it reminded me of the way that, like, some of like our like politicians are, where they're like very, very progressive when they're like at the start of their careers, and then after just like so long in the system, they just become the system. They no longer want to change it. They are the system. And that was kind of the vibe I got. I wonder, that's not a character like I'm super invested in, personally. Like I think she's like she's a good character in like the books and stuff, and I liked her. But I know some people are like super fans of her from like the books, and the way she is here is very not what she was in the books. It's it's not quite Luke in The Last Jedi type of difference, but it is like definitely a shift. So I do wonder how like really big fans of her are feling about that.
Yeah, we know from trailers that we'll see her out in the field at some point, so maybe there'll be a little more kind of reminders of what she used to be like in that situation. Right now she's just like the boss, you know what I mean? She's just middle management who's telling Soul what to do, and to her credit, she is like later on when Soul's like, hey, we have OSHA, I don't think she did it. She's like, I tend to agree with you. She couldn't have done it, whatever. So she's more
after she had like solid proof.
Yeah, but she's a lot more open-minded than Jord, I guess you'd say, right? You've got like those three I feel like are a spectrum of like the Jedi, because Soul is like the most, sort of independent thinking, it seems like, or at least the most, I don't know. Yeah. Like I just want to say Qui-Gon. Like he reminds me of Qui-Gon in some ways. Like he's not Qui-Gon, but like more of a tendency to think for himself or kind of challenge what the Jedi institution might say, it seems like so far. And then Vernestra seems to be definitely more like, hey, we always have to have a meeting. Are you kidding me? We're not going to have a meeting. Like we've got to have a meeting. You know what I mean? But also she's willing to like be open to certain ideas and things. And then you've got Jord seems to be just totally like, I never deviate from the book of law, the rules. You know what I mean? Like he seems to have very little ability to think outside the box at all. So I feel like that's like a spectrum there. In the way those characters are being used and presented. So, yeah.
Is it Jord or Yord?
Oh, you're right. It's Yord. Yeah, my bad. Yord. Yeah, Jord is the drummer from Propagandy. So, and he wouldn't be like that. He wouldn't be like that. So sorry, Jordy. Yeah. So okay. So then we meet Osha. We learn a little more about her. She ends up being, because the bartender identifies her as the person who killed the Jedi. She is arrested by Yord, and they do the Mandalorian thing where it's just a droid prison ship that takes her. And so some of those other prisoners have an escape plan worked out. There's a very alien-inspired facehugger alien that's holding one back, but. I love that because two things happen in that scene that I thought were really interesting. One is that she needs to try to use the Force to free herself, and she can't do it. She tries and she can't, which I think, again, this is like the show is in some ways a mystery, right? And so, well, is she the one who was killing the Jedi? Well, I don't know. It looks like she can't even use the Force, and we know we saw May using the Force, right? So how could they be the same person? But then also, she has the opportunity to hop in that escape pod and get out of there, and then she chooses to be selfless and rescue that prisoner who was specifically referred to as a violent criminal to her, and she still chooses to help that person. Of course, he doesn't help her back. He takes off without her, but to me it was just like, oh, she still has the heart of a Jedi, she still is willing to risk her life for someone else. And it's not unlike Indara in the opening scene of the show, like, using the Force to rescue that helpless person or whatever. So it just really, like, that scene to me, I thought that was really great, that in the same scene we see, like, she can't use the Force, but she's still a Jedi at heart, So I love that.
That was such a good scene. I don't want to just reiterate everything you just said, but those were all the things I was noticing as well. I do wonder if it is like, did she like the concept I think introduced in The Last Jedi of like cutting yourself off from the Force, making that conscious decision like Luke does. But she also is like so much less grumpy than Luke about like, and even like when you think of people who have like left the Jedi Order, like Ahsoka is like very angsty about leaving the Jedi Order. Luke is grumpy about it, and Osha is just like, yeah, cool, I just got a different job. Like,
yeah.
Like, I decided to do this instead.
Right.
And it's like, just like nothing against the Jedi Order or anything. Just decide to move on.
Well, and she directly states too, like, I would never betray the Order, stuff like that. Yeah. So she's very posy towards the Jedi. Yeah. And then which sure is the opposite of May, right? Who is not very posy towards the Jedi. You know what I mean? So that's that duality there.
All these force powers. Potentially force powers.
No, she's definitely exhibiting force powers. I mean, she's like using the Force to pull knives back to her, and like she stands there and like instead of reaching into her pockets to pull the knives out, she just goes like this, and the knives like like, you know what I mean, into her hands and stuff. So
yeah, it's so hard for me to kind of like separate like what is the Force versus like what is, you know, that kind of heightened martial arts like wuxia style stuff where you have, you know, like the idealized versions of like kung fu masters and, you know, whatever, where they are able to like do these like superhuman feats, you know, in like film and TV and stuff. Versus like what is like the, you know, like straight up like Star Wars.
Yeah, like her like dancing up like the banister and like, you know, the way she kind of floats around the room and stuff. I wouldn't chalk that up to the Force. Like I watching that, I'm like, okay, this just seems like it's a martial arts movie thing, you know, or whatever. But I feel like when you see characters pull things to themselves in a Star Wars thing, it's hard to not, you know, like that would be wild. To me, that would be wild if they were having characters do that, but they wanted us as an audience to go, oh, that's not the Force they're using, even though it looks exactly like when Force users use the Force. That'd be tough to.
Yeah, I think growing up on Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat has like really warped my brain into thinking that stuff is normal. It's like, yeah, dudes can just, you know, if you study under Shang Long, you'll be able to throw a fireball.
Well, yeah.
But yeah.
And hold your own in the greatest fighting tournament, right? Yeah.
Anyways, moving on with the plot.
Yeah. So then, like, basically, at this point in the episode, they get into Osha's, I don't know if we'd call it a Force vision or if it's probably that, I guess, but it's definitely because she crashes on that icy planet or whatever. And then there's, she's communing or having a conversation or a connection of some kind with May. Osha is. But it doesn't seem real. So it's either like some kind of Force vision or, you know, at a certain point I started to wonder, is it like Kylo and Rey when they're connected by the Force in The Last Jedi and then in Rise of Skywalker? Something like that might be going on too, I guess. But it's interesting. I mean, we learn a little bit more about the fire and the tragedy from the past. We learn a little bit more about their relationship. But May says, "You're with me, I'm with you, always one, but born as two." And then she says, "As above sits the stars and below lies the sea, I give you you, and you give me me." So, again, two sides of the same thing, duality, you know, the connection between the two of them. Very, very intriguing, very interesting. And, you know, so far these two episodes are presenting it as they're sisters. One was presumed dead, but she's not dead. She's alive, and she's, you know, carrying out these murders. And I think that's what's happening, but I'm also... I don't know. Like, part of me just wonders, could there be some more metaphysical or, you know, because I don't know, because, like, Soul's like, I saw her die. Like, we know she died. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure. Because, and there's a lot of shots of Osha waking up in these episodes, too, or maybe in the first episode. But there's lots of, like, I'm coming out of something. You know what I mean? And so, I don't know. It's very intriguing. I don't have any kind of theory. I don't have any kind of, you know, conclusion. But I guess I'm just saying, part of me is pretty open to the idea that maybe it's not as simple as Osha's alive. We thought May was dead. Oh, turns out May is alive too. Maybe there's something more complex or something more Force related going on here.
Yes, and I think it's also... I get a sense of Osha being somewhat of potentially an unreliable protagonist. She does seems to see like visions of, of like of people, younger versions of her sister, her sister as she last saw her, maybe, stuff like that. And they kind of they ruled out this idea of like, it's a split personality, and like Osha is actually murdering these people as May, because like, which was something like that I went to, immediately, like a Fight Club type situation, and but then they're like, no, she was here with you when this murder happened. So like, that is definitely not something that's happening.
Right, physically. But, then we think to the end of The Last Jedi, where Luke is on Ahch-To, but everyone else thinks he's right there on Crate. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying, like, I'm not going to my little book, like, and saying, oh, well, on page 87, it says that one of the force powers that a person can do is that, and we know, but I'm just saying, like, there are times in Star Wars and with the Force where, maybe things aren't exactly as we think they are. I don't know that I want something like that to be the case. You know what I mean? Like, I think May turning out to be alive and the two of them being sort of two sides of, or like, they're sisters. They have that unbreakable bond, yet they've gone in completely different directions. Hey, sure, that's a compelling story, and I'm happy to watch that show, and I think that could be great and probably is what's going on. But then on the other hand, like, part of me is like, I don't know. It just seems like they're really toying around with the idea that, like, well, May died, and and Osha. I just think there's something going on here that like, because otherwise it's like, by the end of the first episode, probably, you already know, like, well, there's Osha, there's May, Osha's good, May's bad. Like, it just seems like it's probably not that simple, I guess,
Yeah, but I don't know if I can. They do so much to, like, knock the idea of what you were just describing out, or like disprove it, because like, you do have the moment of like, Osha like trying to use her Jedi powers, and she can't. So it's like, well, if she can't like, do a simple like force pull, like, how is she able to do this like masterful projection type thing? But then there's the part where, May and Osha are in the same scene, and Osha like shoots at her.
Yeah, but here's what I like about that. Okay, number one, just in response to your previous comment, I'm not, like, it's not my theory that this is what's happening, but, theorizing that something like that could be happening. I don't think Osha would be aware of it. I don't think Osha would be intentionally like, ooh, I'm going to send myself out as May and kill, like, whatever. I think it would be something that she does not know is happening. A fracture, split personality is probably not the right way to put it, but something like that, right? So that's number one. And number two, I think it's really interesting that, like, when May and Osha are on screen at the same time, none of those other Jedi, unless I could be missing something, but nobody else is there to see that. Yeah. She shoots at the speeder as it takes off, and then they come around the corner and go, oh, there you are. Like, she got, you know what I mean? It's like, that's kind of interesting. And yeah, so we have seen May and Osha on screen together, but I don't think any of the characters in the story have seen May and Osha on screen together. Mm-hmm. So
that scene is, again, like, we're jumping ahead because that's like basically the end of the second episode.
And but, yeah.
It's, that scene is so interesting because they're like, yeah, like, Soul's like, no, give Osha the blaster. She can use it. Like, he had no doubt that, like, she was like sharp enough of a shot. And then when she actually does take the shot, she like completely whiffs it. like just horrible, like half-hearted shot that could be like she missed intentionally on purpose because there's this like greater deception happening here, or it could be, you know, she was emotionally torn and didn't want to shoot her sister directly.
Yep.
Or it could be kind of like what you're describing, and it was like a self-preservation thing, or something that didn't even happen.
I watched it again, you know, for the second time today, and she misses the shot, but when she shoots, like, it goes like this. Like, her hand, like, actually, which is not normally how, you know, if you're filming, oh, the cowboy's shooting at the outlaw across the alley or whatever, and they miss. They don't, like, you don't see their hand jerk to the wrong direction before they miss, right? Like, it was, to me, I'm almost certain that that scene was filmed or you know, put together in a way that if you look closely, she's intentionally missing that shot, which, you know, makes sense for multiple reasons, like you just said. Like, it's her sister. Maybe she doesn't want to shoot her, right? So that's, and also it was set to stun. Like, it was coded as set to stun in Star Wars language in a big way. So why not stun your sister? You know what I mean? Like, you want to, you know? So I don't know. It's interesting.
It would have led to her being captured.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Right. Well, yeah, I don't know. So yeah, it's just, it's a mystery, right? It's keeping us guessing, and I think it's supposed to, and that's
like,
good.
What I was saying, like, every 5 minutes there's like a subtle mystery that is.
But they're all connected, and, you know, the larger takeaway is, like, we don't really know what's going on. You know what I mean? You think you do, but there's all these little mysteries where it's like, I can be, you know, I have an idea, like, I'm following the plot, I'm following the story, I get it, but also I think I get that I'm not, you know, when you're watching it, if it's Agatha Christie or something, it's like you're following the story, but also you know that you're not supposed to have the answers yet. You know what I mean?
Or you do have the answer, and you're second guessing yourself because of things that are happening.
Okay.
So the now that we're like actually talking about it, I'm like, what else makes me feel this way when I watch it? What else in recent memory? Because there's something on the tip of my tongue that's like, yeah, that's what this feels like, and it's the most obvious thing ever. It's the Knives Out movies.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I just watched the first one, yeah.
Like, especially the second one, where you're like, oh, it's obviously this guy. And then you're like, oh, wait, no. Now I'm being directed to think that it's this. Or, well, now I'm not so sure. Now I'm thinking it could be this or this. And then you get to the end and you're like, yeah, it was that guy. Duh.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, yeah, absolutely. And so, like, most of my notes, like almost everything I wrote down for the second episode, Revenge Justice, you know, most of what I wrote down has to do with the sort of mystery around what happened that night when, you know, Sol saved Osha and May died or whatever. Like, what happened there and what role did the Jedi play in it? Because, again, watching the first episode, it's like, okay, well, May burned down their home, or maybe more of their community too, not just the home, I'm not sure, but like burned down their home. The Jedi saved Osha because they could. They failed at saving May. Like, that's the story, right? But when you get to episode 2, it becomes very clear that there is more to this story that we do not know. You know what I mean? So the second episode opens up in, I forget the name of the planet, but it's at the local Jedi temple on that planet. And the Jedi Master Torben is there in a deep meditation state. We actually know about these from the, you know, books and comics and stuff, or what he's doing. It's called the Bearish Vow. You familiar with that, Ryan? Or do you remember that? Or okay, it comes up sometimes. I forget where it was first mentioned, but I know I've read about it or heard it referenced, or, you know, whatever, in a couple of books at least. So I looked it up, and I don't have the, like, you know, Wikipedia page open right now or whatever, but what I wrote down based on what I looked up, it's something where the person cuts themselves off basically from everything. They're still connected to the Force, but they are not really. They're going into like a phase of isolation or whatever, and usually as an act of atonement, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So Torben is in this, has taken this bearish vow. The other Jedi says he hasn't spoken to anyone in 10 years, right? And I found this really interesting. Soul's like, he'll talk to me, and Soul is one of the other people that was there that night. So it's like, ooh, what are they not saying? Or what is the secret between them? Or what is the, how is he so confident that Torben would talk to him? So I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, so this episode, like the first part of it at least, is centered around the fact that May is there to kill Torben. He's the next Jedi on her list to kill. And she tries, but like in this bearish vow, it's pretty cool. It's like pretty sweet. Yeah. In this bearish vow, she can't attack him. He's got this force barrier around him,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was like just a cool, like weird action sequence. Like she's just like doing all of these like cool attacks and just like kind of like bouncing off like an invisible wall.
It was really cool, but then it was so much cooler the second time she came back and she's like, I think I wrote down, I wrote it down here. What does she say to him? She says, confess your crime to the Jedi Council or receive the forgiveness you seek right here, right now from me. And that's when she puts that poison down and he takes it. Like he opens his eyes and he takes that poison.
Yeah.
That's so compelling. It's so intriguing, a Jedi who's so, I don't know if so devout is the right word, but like so focused that he has taken this bearish vow. He spent 10 years in isolation, and yet is so, I don't know if afraid is the right word, but so unwilling to confess to whatever his crime is, And like, hey, May's an unreliable narrator too, right? So we could say, well, maybe, what he did isn't bad at all, right? Maybe it's just from her perspective, it's bad. But Old Sport is like, I will take this poison and die right here rather than, have to confess to whatever happened. So that's like really, really cool and really interesting and really compelling.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's one element of the episode that I wanted to talk about for sure. Another thing, well, let's talk about this real quick. And then, so there's a great conversation between Soul and Osha where Osha is trying to tell Soul, like, hey, you know what? It's not your fault what happened that night. Like, you have to forgive yourself or whatever. Soul says, I tried to save you both. And he says, I've come to peace with what happened. And Osha says, that's a lesson you tried to teach me many times, to accept what I lost, but I wasn't a very good student. And Soul says, perhaps I wasn't a very good teacher. Mm-hmm. And I love that. It reminds me of Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon to an extent, right?
Obi-Wan and Anakin.
Yeah, and it presents Soul as a humble and wise kind of Jedi Master, which I like quite a bit. And also, ever since, we'll see, there's 6 episodes left, we'll see what happens with Osha. But ever since she chose to save that criminal rather than save herself, I was like, oh, she's on the path back to being a Jedi. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see her, become a Jedi, because she just, like, she seems like more of a Jedi than Yord. You know what I mean? Yord knows that there's some damn rule in the rule book about how you can't give a weapon to a civilian, but you know what I mean? Like, she is the one who puts her life on the line and save someone else. I'm like, that's an actual Jedi, right? So let's see her on the path back to that calling.
I mean, Yord is so endearing, though.
Oh, I like him.
I love him, and his actor is, I don't know the name off the top of my head, but is so good.
Yeah.
Charlie Barnett.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
And just like a great, foil to other characters, and just like a really interesting character in his own right, because like he's also like, because he has this thing where he's like just, he's just gotten promoted after a struggle. It was a struggle for him to get there, and now he's like just trying to do everything right.
Yeah, he's kind of a dingus too. Like he's like kind of bragging about it. Like he seems like he wants to remind Jackie, who we haven't mentioned at all yet, but she's really great too. He wants to remind Jackie at every possible chance that he's a knight and she's a Padawan. And he's very again, like it's all about the institution, it's all about the rules, it's all about the organization. So he's leveled up and she hasn't, so therefore you know what I mean, he feels really good about that. But then when they have to make a plan for, okay, so how do we get information about the dude who made the poison or whatever, how do we get like the info we need about what's going on here? Like Jackie has a way better plan than Yord does, and he gets put in his place a little bit in that regard. So that was cool. Yeah. By the way, real quick, we haven't mentioned the fact that Carrie-Anne Moss dies in the first scene of the show, which she was just one of the big names in the cast list. I thought of that when you mentioned Charlie Barnett and the actor. So anyway, that was pretty shocking. But yeah, the next thing I wanted to bring up, one of the last like big points I wanted to bring up, and you had mentioned it, huh?
Or did she?
I think she did. I hope. As far as I know, Dave Filoni's not writing this show, so I'm hoping that getting murdered means you're actually dead. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think like
I don't want this show about like tracking down the murderer of Jedi. Someone's killing Jedi. They're not really dying. It's just like they're just hurting them real bad. Like, please don't do that.
No, I meant, I don't know. I feel like you can't in like mysteries like this. You can never, take anything for granted. You can never trust anything.
All right. Well, I guess that's true, but I'm hoping this is a Drew Barrymore in the opening of Scream situation where it's like, you thought this big star was going to be in this movie, but actually it's so impactful because we killed her off right away,
Yeah, that's a good thing too.
But no, the next thing I wanted to bring, or the other big point I wanted to bring up that I think is really interesting is this dynamic of the Sith wants May to kill without a weapon. And I just think that's so interesting. And I don't know if that's a sort of, a trope of these types of movies in some way, or if it's like some kind of like this is an element of these, would you say wushu or wuxi, wushu films, or if there's something there, or if it's just a unique concept here. But I find it really interesting, especially too, like in that final scene of the first episode when he kind of says it out loud or whatever, like no weapons. Like one of the next, like almost immediately, he turns on his lightsaber. And so I'm just like, this is interesting. This is like, so like, what is the point of this? You got to kill the Jedi, but without a weapon. I'm sure somebody else has figured it out, but I don't really get it yet. The one thing though, that intrigues me about it is the fact that he's telling her that that's how she should kill these Jedi, but then she is using weapons to kill the Jedi, right? I mean, she used the poison. I know she wasn't supposed to use the poison because she tells the poison guy, like, you can't tell him about it. Part of me is like a little confused on the little knives that she throws. Do those count as weapons or do they not? They seem like weapons to me, but...
Well, and that's, I mean, so like, it seemed like it was okay for her to kill Master Indara with the knives. Like, that was fine. And then she had her meeting with the Sith, and he was like, okay, now no weapon. And
yeah, but still the first thing she tried to do was kill Torben with the knives. Like, she immediately tried to kill him with the knives. So I'm wondering, is it like a dynamic where
did she, or was she just throwing punches and kicks?
Oh, no, she threw knives. Like you see knives and they fall to the ground or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it after she tried?
I mean, she might have tried to punch him or kick him first, but I mean, in that same scene, she's throwing knives at him, you know? So it's like...
Well, and then I think we also find out that, like, she doesn't quite have any hang-ups about bending the rules.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a very sneaky, Sithy thing to do.
They're always lying to each other.
Very dishonorable.
Yeah.
But she does, like... But it's also, like, turns out a really smart way to do that job as well. And it's almost like I think it's, like, scarier than, like, someone with a weapon. Like, what she does. It's, like, it's such a chilling scene.
Yeah, well, and specifically with that character, too, because that character apparently feels so much guilt and shame that they're willing to kill themselves, take the poison, you know, willingly. So that makes it that much more disturbing and kind of, you know, effective, I guess, or possible or whatever. Because I don't know, like, I don't think that would work with Kelnaka. I don't think that would have worked with Indara, right? So that's a marriage there of a method and also the right target for that method. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I just don't know what is the intention of the Sith character, whoever that is, to say, you know, do it without a weapon. Is it a challenge to her? Is it some part of philosophy or code? I mean, he says an acolyte strikes without a weapon, or whatever the exact language is. But like, well, what is it about an acolyte that, you know, necessitates that or makes that the right, you know, kind of method? So yeah, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And then, like, again, the other big mystery here is what did happen that night? Like, what did the Jedi do? Because Torben, Torben says, "I've been waiting for you, May," which is interesting. You know, that kind of puts some cold water on the idea that May really died that night, but there's something else more spiritual or force related going on, because he says, "I've been waiting for you." It's like, well, why would you be waiting for someone? Although I don't know if it's like he's haunted, you know, kind of thing. Like, I don't know, like the ghost of Christmas past. I've been waiting for you. You know what I mean? Kind of situation. Probably not, but it's just a compelling thought to me that came across my mind in this exact moment. But, you know, it could be something like that. But probably it means that he knew she was still alive, right? And then he says, "Forgive me, we thought we were doing the right thing." So what did they do that they thought was the right thing that he now feels so much shame about that it couldn't have been the right thing, right? It can't just be leaving her to die, quote unquote, because they mistakenly thought she was dead. Like, there's definitely something way more to it than that. So, and the four Jedi are Indara and Torben, who are both dead now, and then the other two are Sol and Kelnaka. And in the third episode, very clearly, we're going to Kelnaka in the third episode. So whether Kelnaka dies or not, I don't know, but we don't exactly have like a whole season's worth of hunting down these Jedi to try to kill them. You know what I mean? So like, the story is going to open up pretty quickly and go into different directions. You know, one of the first things I was talking about with Kevin on Monday night when we were driving home was like Leslie Headland saying in that one, you know, piece on StarWars.com a month or so ago, I think when the last trailer came out, probably on Star Wars Day, there was that quote that was like, "If you think you know what the show is, you have no idea. Like, you don't know what the show is." And I can tell that if we think this show is about like May hunting down these four Jedi, like, that's not what the show is about, because we're already almost done with that after the first two episodes, and I have no idea what it's going to be after that, but I'm really excited.
Yeah, and I mean, it's already like not been what I thought it was going to be in so many ways going into it, and then like now, like we've finally gotten to this place where it's like, okay, I understand what the show is, but then you're right, like you know, it's bound to, like, there's only so much more you can do with this, you know, quest that's half over after the second episode.
Yeah. Well, My kind of last stuff for this episode is the last conversation Soul and Osha have, where Osha's like, I want to go, like, I need to go with you. I need to see my sister or whatever. And Soul says, this is grief, let it go. Osha says, I deserve justice. Soul says, you want revenge. Look what revenge has done to your sister. Again, he's striking me as a very, like, pure Jedi so far. Just in terms of, like, it's not in that he's following every rule that he's supposed to follow or whatever. I mean, he had the hollow where he had an attachment, right? He's like looking at the hollow of her in the first episode, and his Padawan Jackie's like, no, that's against the Jedi way or whatever, you know. But it's like, to me, he does have so much in common with like a Qui-Gon type character, because it's like, okay, yeah, that's what the rule is, but he's like, our memories are lessons. You know what I mean? If we don't study those lessons, then we're bound to repeat the past. Like, that's something Qui-Gon would have said if Obi-Wan would have admonished him for not doing what the council says to do all the time or whatever, you know? So I like that. And I feel like what he says to her is like really distilled, pure Jedi philosophy. Like, no, you want revenge. Revenge will twist you. It will change you. Like, that's not something that you should pursue, right? So I love that. And then he tells her, I couldn't save her when you were children. Let me try now. Yeah, whatever it is that happened that night with May and Osha, it's like really driving all of these, or at least these four characters. And then obviously, you know, May and Osha too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So a final thing, like, I don't know, kind of a prediction, but I think more of just like a broad thing that I think we're going to see is again, going back to a Ryan Johnson joint. I think it's possible that there is going to be some Rashomon effect happening with like the same event perceived by different characters in different ways. I think probably potentially the penultimate moment will be either one, like in The Last Jedi, a series of flashback events where we do see like Indara and, you know, the other three Jedi and what actually happened. But I do wonder if that will be rolled out in like a Rashomon way.
Yeah.
Where we get that maybe in like the next episode, but then in the episode after that we get it from like a slightly different angle that changes our perception, and then like, you know, ultimately culminating in, you know, the truth of it.
I like that, and I could definitely see that being the way it goes. I think Rashomon has been mentioned in some of the press stuff, or like, I don't know if it's a magazine or an interview or whatever, but I think Rashomon's been brought up potentially, so I could definitely see that for sure. Yeah. And that would be a good way for Carrie-Anne Moss to still be involved in the show too. Yep. So just as long as she's actually dead after she gets killed, that's what I'm mostly interested in, you know. And she can't come back as a Force ghost either. No Force ghost stuff, because the whole thing is like Qui-Gon figured that out, you know what I mean? So I think it would be weird if Jedi of the previous generation were doing that anytime they get killed.
I don't know. I feel like there's got to be things that contradict that is in some extended media, but I can't. I don't know. I can't think off the top of my head.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. But in the new canon or whatever, I don't think so, but maybe. Because even like there's the whole Clone Wars thing where Yoda talks to the Wills and he's like, holy, whoa, are you kidding me? Like, this is a thing that can happen? Qui-Gon Jinn did this? Oh my God, you know? So I think it's pretty established that's a new revelation to the Jedi. But I don't think that. Yeah. Also, let's just say, like, I'll just say real quick, I don't really want every Star Wars show I watch to be like, and then when the Jedi die, they come back as a ghost. You always see your old friends back as a ghost all the time. You know what I mean? I think like that should be used sparingly. So I don't think a character we saw for one scene in the beginning of this show needs to come back as a Force ghost myself. But that's where I land on it.
I don't think it. I don't think it makes sense with that character.
Right.
I was just like more thinking in general terms of like, maybe there's probably something, but maybe not.
Yeah. If I have a prediction, right? Not necessarily like a big plot, like where the story overall is headed, but I am convinced, and maybe this is super obvious, so it probably is, but I am convinced that the Sith is the apprentice to a Sith master, and that May is like his secret, apprentice or whatever that he's trying to
his Star Killer,
or more like when Palpatine had Dooku, and he was trying to get, well, that's not quite right, because that would be Palpatine basically having a backup plan. This wouldn't be the master having a backup plan, but it would be more like when Vader is like, hey, Luke, join me, and together we can overthrow the Empire, or the Emperor, you know what I mean? Or even when Anakin tells Obi-Wan, does he tell Obi-Wan or just Padme? Anyway, but even by the end of Revenge of the Sith, before Obi-Wan strikes him down, he's like figuring out, like, he's saying, like, we could overthrow, I could be more powerful than the Empire, I could take over, you know what I mean? So they're always, that's like the basic concept of the Sith, right? They're always plotting to remove whoever's at the top and position themselves there. So, but you don't do it until you have a number two that's going to be your number two. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think like there still is, the term acolyte, which is not apprentice.
Yes, exactly.
Like,
yeah.
This is it's probably rooted in what you're talking about, or maybe they're just putting a name on what you're talking about, or this could be something that's like a new idea.
Yeah. But I think there's a big bad waiting in the wings that we have not seen yet, I guess, is what my prediction is. Because the helmeted guy with the red lightsaber is cool, but big Count Dooku or Kylo Ren kind of vibes. You know what I mean? Not main bad guy vibes. To me.
Yeah.
That's my prediction.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But this is like, I don't know. I guess I feel like this with, I think a lot of. I think this show has like the mystery of it does feel so kind of fresh that like it's really exciting to for like a week to week type show where like I feel like I watch Star Wars shows week to week because they're Star Wars shows and I want to see what happens and I want to see Star Wars shows, but like I feel like with Mandalorian especially, like who knows what the next episode is going to be. Like it's it could be a direct follow-up to like a cliffhanger in the previous episode, or it could be something with totally different characters somewhere else, and it kind of it all connects, but it's like it kind of meanders in different directions, whereas like this is like it's like a really good like comic book where you get to the last page and you're like, oh whoa,
yeah,
I can't wait until like the next issue to see what happens. Like I need I need you to keep feeding me information about this story, and knowing that, you know, every bit of information is probably going to like change my perception of what's happening here. And
yeah,
I think that's really fun.
yeah, I agree. I'm nervous and excited to watch this with my family because especially the kids, I feel like are almost getting to a point where they're like looking for reasons to think a new Star Wars show sucks or whatever. You know what I mean? And my wife will always tell me like, you know, as long as it's Star Wars, you're gonna like it. Like you'll like anything, no matter how bad it is, if it's Star Wars. And I'm like, that's not true. I don't think. I mean, I don't have any evidence to prove it's not true, but like, it's not true. You know what I mean? But like, so I feel like there's a little bit of that, like, almost like we're gonna assume it's not gonna be that great, and it has to win us over or whatever. But I just feel like this is so easy to watch, and like you said, one episode like pulls you into the next episode, and it's gonna be this like really kind of serialized storytelling in that way. That's gonna be, you know, going to be good. And I feel like Andor, I won him over on Andor eventually, but it was a really tough sell, and that show's a slow burn, you know what I mean, especially early on. You know, I feel like if the Narcana 5, is that the prison planet, like if that arc was the first arc, I mean, that wouldn't make sense, but I feel like that would hook somebody right away, you know what I mean? But the first episodes of that show are more of a slow burn, and even the Aldani stuff was a little more of a slow burn, and they ended up liking the show, respecting the show, etc., but they weren't loving it all the way through. And I hope that this one, I feel like it's a little more fun right from the start. It's more intriguing right from the start, and it kicks off with a bang, and it just keeps going. And I'm hoping that that'll work for a lot of people, including my wife and kids.
Yeah, I definitely saw some hesitation around this show just from like casual Star Wars fans on social media, who, you know, I've talked to multiple people who were like, okay, people are saying this is good, but I'm not sure if I can trust it. And like I even saw people being like, yeah, I still hear that Andor's good, but I don't know. I don't know.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
And so I mean, Star Wars just always has an uphill battle with people, I think.
Yeah.
Well, like,
the more of it there is
who
too.
aren't us who watch everything, but like honestly, I think you would, or you know, myself to a degree, if someone was like, hey, this new Marvel show is
100%.
so good, like you have to watch it, like it's so smart, it's so well done. I feel like I'd be like, you said that about a couple things.
Yeah, or the sad thing, and I'm just being honest here, but the sad thing is, like, for me, I think I would believe them, but still not be interested and just not want to watch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and
that's that.
I mean,
I think that's because of oversaturation, and I think that's a big problem with. It's not oversaturated to me. Like, I can handle more Star Wars than we're getting, at least in terms of live action. But I think for a lot of people, there's like another one, like, you know what I mean? And some of them haven't hit with them in the past, so it's like, it's a tough sell maybe. But I'm hoping people will check this out, because I think if people watch it, they're going to like it. You know what I mean? It seems like it would be, even though it does have some, you know, there's depth and complexity there. Like, I feel like it would be pretty pleasing, crowd pleasing to like most viewers. You know what I mean? I think there's a good hook, and it's fun, and I don't see much that would turn people away, and I think people are going to be interested in this story and want to follow it. So hopefully people are tuning in, or will tune in, you know.
Yeah, I think like the thing I can leverage with a lot of people in my circle who are hesitant about it is like, the worst people on the planet hate this show. So, you know, when was the last time that happened? Last Jedi. You like the Last Jedi. That's, you know?
Yeah.
'Cause like all the casual Star Wars fans that I know who are like anti some part of, you know, recent activities, like they're all into The Last Jedi and respect the hell out of that movie and Rian Johnson in particular. And I will play the Rian Johnson card on selling it to people. Be like, this is essentially the show from kind of his Acolyte. Leslie Headland. Yeah. They work together. They're cut from a similar cloth. They have similar ideas. This show kind of feels like The Last Jedi.
Well, I used some. I had a gotcha moment with Owen, my older son, yesterday because he really wants me to take him to the. I saw the TV glow. Is that what it's called? Name of the movie? Yeah. I saw the TV, or I see the TV.
I went to that the previous weekend, last week.
Okay, well, it's not. Last time we checked, it wasn't playing here. It was playing he was wanted to go. Oh, I know. I told him I went to the AMC 21 River East Theater in downtown Chicago for the Acolyte, and he's like, oh, well, I see the TV glow is playing there. And I was like, yeah, well, I don't think we're going to drive an hour and a half and pay $20 for parking to go see that movie when I'm sure it's going to be playing in a theater closer, by. And he was like, yeah, but it's a queer filmmaker and it's Pride Month, so we should do that. And I was like, well, interesting you say that because I have a Star Wars show I could interest you in. And he's a little hesitant to watch a new Star Wars show, so I was able to play that card. So we'll see if it works or not. But yeah. And I do want to see, I see the TV glow, or I saw the TV glow, but I think I can wait until it's within a half an hour drive of me instead of, a 3-hour round trip drive to go see it. Probably more than 3 hours round trip.
Yeah, it's good, and it's something I'm glad I saw in the theater with that, the more you know about it, I think the less you might get out of it. I don't know.
Okay.
It was one of those things where I thought I knew what it was, and then I watched it. I was like, oh, okay, this is something cool, different. And I think it's some amazing talent, and there are things that I have held off on even mentioning to you in particular because there's things that you're gonna pop for in it. But all that said,
John Cena's in the movie. Okay, all right, nice.
Let me tell you about this show on Max called Peacemaker. Anyways, but yeah, all that said, I would not drive 3 hours and pay $50 to see it. I drove, 20 minutes and saw it at Alamo using Alamo Pass with free parking. So it was a very different experience. But
right on. Well, Ryan, in case you forgot or just fell off, it's time to wrap this show up. We gotta close the show here. I'm hot. You knock your shell off. My money stack fat because I can't turn the swell off. The franchise. It's the John Cena. It's the
yeah.
Okay. Anyway, we need to close the show here. I feel like we had a really good episode going there until I started doing the John Cena rap. So it's time to take her home. Got to finish it up. So thank you very much for listening and or watching. And we are for sure going to be back soon with another episode because there's this show, The Acolyte, that's airing weekly, and it has its hooks in us, and we want to talk about it every week. So
you know what else is airing weekly? Blockade Runner podcast.
Yes, exactly.
For the next 8 weeks or 6 weeks.
6 weeks. Yep. Mm-hmm. So that's happening. So we will be back soon with another episode. Until then, you can find everything we do at blockaderunnerpodcast.com. If you want to message the show and share your thoughts on the Acolyte theories, whatever, you can email the show, blockaderunnerpodcast@gmail.com. You can message us on Blue Sky, and our account is Blockade Runner.
Just look up Blockade Runner.
Yeah, on Blue Sky.
Easy.
Yeah, and Ryan, where could listeners find you on Blue Sky?
My personal account where I actually talk about Star Wars is via Malay. And then my other 2 accounts are DVD and UMD movies, menus. And then it is also Hot Cube Summer. It is Summer GameCube Fest over on my other account. That's DefStan480. on Blue Sky, and hopefully we can maybe do some rogue leader talk at some point.
Oh yeah, for sure. Cool. Yeah, absolutely. And we do have our Discord as well, so I'll put the link to our Discord in the show notes, as we do every week. But if you're a Discord user, we'd love to see you join our Discord, and we'll be talking about the Acolyte and Star Wars in general there. So, until next time, thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another episode of the Blockade Runner podcast.